Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. I was like totally a day off, so because my husband was home like on Thursday night, and that's when that whole tornado stuff happened. And then it was Friday, and excuse me. In the morning, I'm hacking away, just so you guys know that when your body goes through processes overnight, it does all of its filtering and digestion, and so yes, mucus does happen in the morning, and then it gets cleared away, and then everything is wonderful. So let's just take a look at cells, not even from an infinitesimal cellular basis, but also how it translates in your whole world. Because this is how we're going to understand humanity and what drives it, as well as understand ourselves. Okay. And I go over this a lot because it does help me reinforce this information. So that way, when I do relay this to a specific crowd, I know the points like the back of my hand. And so this is like my own classroom. And then you guys are like my guinea pigs, or not even guinea pigs, but a test audience to see how this relates and translates. And if you get it, if you don't get it, great. If you do, great, wonderful. So the stories about why cells die or reproduce or grow must be translatable into everything. So you look at relationships. Hey, Kathy, you look at the businesses that are out there. You look at the government. You look at all the different cliques, like when you go to high school and you see all the cliques, you see all like the jocks in one area, which is like a plethora of cells. You see all of the nerds in another area. The 1980s was famous for compartmentalizing and diversifying and separating out the high school students based upon the parents' belief systems and socioeconomic statuses and what else? Who knows what else? Okay, so when I was thinking about like cells and when somebody goes off and leaves their family, or when they go get married, when they leave their family, if they are staying with their family indefinitely, then it means that they are mutated because they need to have other parts of the pie, because one family makes one whole piece of the pie, and then every individual member makes up a component. Because they're not strong by themselves, they actually are more strength in numbers because they can't handle being by themselves. They can't stand by themselves. So when you can't stand by yourself, you have to then elicit the power of other people's skills and support and energy, so that way you can still maintain. But what happens when somebody leaves a family? Well, they don't like this specific way it's going and they're stronger by themselves, or they go find another type of mutation, because every single groupings of cells is either growth, like you're growing towards a specific purpose, or it's a type of mutation. So when you're gathering, and when you see cells gather like cancer cells or a baby growing, well, which one is more optimal? A baby growing and developing and becoming this independent, strong one person, not part of many, or are they mutating? Are they part of a group that is mutated, that are strong in numbers? Because if they are just one, what's going to happen when you're just one with a specific belief system? There are other different opposing cells with different ideas that could encapsulate and cannibalize that one cell by itself, unless that one cell by itself is so strong that it can actually neutralize all the mutated cells. So, and what do I see? Lactobacillus is like that. Lactobacillus, in the context of candida, is that one type of cell, bacteria cell, whatever, that will neutralize all of those different gathering cells. And that's why lactobacillus probiotics is like cancer candida's mortal enemy, because that's the right fight you should have. So in that context, so then I look at like high school, and I look at in work groups, I look at on the internet with all of like the trolls or Jillian supporters. you have all these different cells. Some are very mutated, others not as mutated, others are completely mutated that they have to be watched by the FBI. And then you have these more benign types of cells of people that when they gather together, they become a target. And so somebody, some weird person wants to go and neutralize that target. That's what I see, right now, what's going on in current events is that we have all these different gatherings of different groups with culture, with religion, with belief systems. And they're making themselves a target because they can't stand alone by themselves. They have to gather in groups because to them, strength in numbers. But why is strength in numbers? Because they can't stand alone. If you can't stand alone and be independent, going with a purpose for a common cause, a common purpose of keeping the US healthy, then you are gathering with other people who are just as mutated, regardless of your belief system. If you have to gather with a bunch of people to get your point across, it's intimidating, and then somebody is going to want to separate and neutralize those gatherings. And that's what happens even in this, like the Jilly Juice. People are trying to neutralize all of these ideas and disseminate it. But here's the thing. It's also relative. So when someone is filtering or interpreting somebody's actions, it's relative to their, not only their external universe, what is impacting outside in, but what is also inside their body, impacting the way they interpret what goes on out there in the world. So when you have this idiot that goes out there and decimates in New Zealand, that's a mental illness. But now he won't think that, right? Because he thinks he's justified in doing whatever he's doing. But he may be listening to rhetoric out there and filtering it through all of his imbalanced, mutated ideas that then translates into this behavior. But he's still acting like a cell trying to neutralize a group of cells, okay? And it's all relative to what context, what element you're working from, to see if that's the right way to do things or the wrong way, because there is right and wrong when it comes to life and death. And if you are promoting death and creating death, and death is the outcome, then obviously what he did was the wrong way. And so when we as Jilly Juicers are gathering in some way, we have a website, but we don't know if everybody on the website is on the up and up. So we're not really gathering on the website as like this one entity that is strength in numbers. No, we are sharing information, and then you in your own household are going to do what you do. We're not hanging out in some cult off-grid living, trying to hang out together and just be separate away from the masses. No, we are taking this information in the right context, promoting life, promoting balance, and then we're trying to then elicit pro-life ideas out of people who may be mutated if they're looking to promote pro-life in their world. I want to say infiltrate, but that sounds so like pejorative, infiltrate. But yeah, we're trying to infiltrate life into a death culture, and that's difficult. But we're not trying to gather and take over. No, we're just trying to slowly drop seeds, because we know that like when you're in a mutated body and you have good cells and you have bad cells, relative to what is going on, okay, the bad cells could take over and multiply and then completely decimate, or the good cells could multiply and take over and create life, even if they are outnumbered by a bunch of the death. Because look, I mean, our body can only handle so many death cells before it completely gets taken down. We have limitations, okay? But this earth, right now, we are in like a fractal type of universe. And so even if our body dies, okay, doesn't mean that it's good, but then there's still other humans out there that can still get the word out. So it's not like, if you die, then the whole idea of pro-life dies with you. We are, right, apoptosis, Crystal. We have like 7 billion people. So we have chances to keep starting over. Okay, and that's what right now our life cycle is all about. the human life cycle, it keeps starting it's allowing us to start over. However, the more that we compound the mutations, the shorter the life cycle. And if we don't keep people who are already living, continuously living, then those that are reproducing on mutated bodies are not going to be able to repopulate the world. So then we're only left with those that are just trying to take care of themselves, and indefinitely. Okay. And so that's where Jilly Juice comes in, is that because we're seeing already in the vaccine schedule, we're seeing already the death of certain businesses, of certain people, the death of ideas are out there. And then they're also reproducing on the mutated ways of thinking. And so what's going to happen is, yes, there's going to be a shorter lifespan. You're seeing that already in the population now, as far as the next generation. Your nieces and nephews, your daughters and your sons that are really small, like babies. And if you don't get a hold of getting their cells going in the right direction, their life cycle is going to be shorter, because no one's fixed the mutations from like 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, 200 years ago that keeps compounding every generation. Okay? So this is the same thing when you look at, why relationships falter. Well, first of all, why do cells gather growth? But what's growing? What's its purpose? Well, yeah, you're growing good cells like a baby developing, or you're growing cancer in your body, cancer cells. And what are you feeding? Though you need yeast in your body because that keeps the balance, but if your diet is horrific and you're not countering and fixing the mutations that are already sustained because of all the negative elements that you've been exposed to, guess what? You're going to have an imbalance. You're going to have too many antibodies that are going to attack your body. You're going to have too many cancer cells that you're going to foster and grow because you're not understanding countering and balancing forces. And your hormones are going to be imbalanced and go all over the place. So yeah, why do cells gather, grow, and what's growing and what its purpose? Well, you have to understand what the components make up your body and why those specific systems work the way they do. So when I was talking about the Down syndrome and why it is that these chromosomes are making several copies, or 3 copies, or 2 copies, or 1 copy of chromosome 21, well, there's been an impact. There's been a mutation in chromosome 21. And then guess what the body does? Guess what the cells do when they see that there is a cell death in chromosome 21? They create they reproduce chromosome 21. But it's not that it says, okay, well, because there's no autophagy really going on. What's happening is that the mutations stay in the body. So that 1 copy of trisomy or chromosome 21 or Down syndrome is there, and it's mutated. So then it reproduces another one, but that mutation is still there. No one's fixed it. So then they have another copy of that cell, which then causes the manifestation, the outcome of having 2 copies or 3 copies of the same chromosome that has 400 genes. It then causes an imbalance. It causes disability. It causes growth issues. It causes mutations that are obvious in the face, in the body, in the muscle, and all that. So that's why I focus on the Down syndrome, because that's it's prevalent out there. It's not so prevalent, but it's out there. Okay? And we have to understand why it happens. It's not something that, it's like permanent. It's because of Newton's 3rd law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And if you are fostering a mutated body with the wrong elements, then yes, you're going to sustain those mutations, even though you say, oh yeah, well, we'll change their diet and see what happens. No, because the mutations haven't been fixed. How do you fix the mutations? You have to have the right kind of elements to do that. But then there is pain involved, and that's where the prostaglandin hormone and understanding what is that? I always forget this name, the calcineurin. So the calcineurin hormone and the prostaglandin hormone have to be elicited, not inhibited. And this is what's going on, is we're inhibiting the right hormones to do what it needs to do to make the corrections where it needs to be. Okay, so this is what prompted this whole thing with Down syndrome and studying that, and then understanding like the whole thing with apoptosis, yes, autophagy, And then also other components of the immune system, like the calcineurin hormone and the prostaglandin, all that aid in the healing process, but also it pushes out the bad cells so they don't overpopulate and they don't multiply because you don't know what it is you're doing. Okay, so then why do relationships falter? Why do people break up? Why do they come together? Well, when you come together, it's because it's two different mutated people wanting to be in a relationship because one couldn't stand by themselves. And then obviously when biological clocks are ticking and the person and the couple's on a death trajectory, they start planning to have children to carry on the genetic line. Okay, so why do relationships falter? Because, well, I mean, they're repelling each other. They're not on the same wavelength. Okay, they have two different ideas of what their purpose is. Why do the races come together? Because they're trying to now grow a baby, or they can't stand by themselves, so they have to come together because they can't stand on their own to then, join in on the common purpose of our community, which is a cell or an organ in of itself. Okay, so why do businesses grow? Because the people are growing, they're developing. Why, when you have a good startup that is growing and developing and staying in business, is because the leadership knows how to foster good cell growth, good people growth. Okay, and then why do then you have subsidiaries? People splinter off, and then like in Facebook, that guy Savarano, whatever, he had to splinter off and do their own thing because somebody wasn't taking care of business. And so then they have to go and splinter off and do their own thing. And sometimes it has to happen. But cells do the same thing. They splinter off. There's a mutation in that relationship. They're not working together anymore. They're working against each other. So then a cell has to go break off and be strong by itself, or create another type of purpose, growth, a mutation, or it's reproducing. So splintering subsidiaries are reproducing, creating children. There's a parent company, and then there's subsidiaries. What are these subsidiaries? These are children of the parent company splintering off and having their own purpose aligned with the parent company. Okay, and then why do businesses then mutate and then die? Because a leadership is dying. They're not making good decisions. It's like, when a person is going to commit horrific acts, well, the leadership in their brain is not filtering the right information and filtering in the wrong information. It's causing death in themselves and other people. And so guess what? When people die and cells die, they try to take everybody around them with them. Okay? And so we have some really mutated people. So that's why PewDiePie and Trump and all those people should not be held accountable for that terrorist act in New Zealand. As far as, well, this guy subscribed to PewDiePie, well, this guy is like a Trump advocate. No, this guy was mutated, and he was taking what people are saying and filtering it and justifying it and twisting it to his agenda. It's not Trump's fault what happened to New Zealand. It's not PewDiePie's fault what happened to New Zealand. No, it's that mutated person that filtered in information and twisted it to his agenda. And it came out in a negative, deadly process. Okay? So, yeah. So then, so why we have anomalies work in the workplace, creating fear? Yeah, well, when you have like the people going postal, the leadership fostered a very divisive type of environment. And then you have mutated people as the employees, not all of them, but some of them, and nobody caught the signs because they were all mutated themselves. See, this is why we have so many, because we can't legislate morals, so we're going to have to react. But good leadership will notice what is going on in their flock of people, and if they're not savvy to if they're not savvy to the situation that goes on, then yes, you're going to have something that's going to explode. Okay? And so, so there's that. And then, yeah, I mean, as far as like the measles stuff, yeah, I mean, back in the 1960s, there was probably a few complications of the measles, but they weren't worried about it as much back then than they do today. I mean, they were, that's why they created the vaccines to begin with, but it wasn't as prevalent. That's why they didn't have the measles vaccine back in the 1960s, because it wasn't as prevalent. But now the reason why they have them now is because things mutate. You see, I mean, this is what people don't understand, is that when you do get vaccinated or you do get exposed to some pathogen, when it goes into your body, it will mutate. And sometimes these things mutate so quickly that they turn into another offshoot. So that's what happens, you know, like on that ship, that Navy ship, that pathogen, that measles, whatever it was, that virus mutated. And so, yeah, they were all vaccinated, but you know, you can't tell how fast these pathogens mutate in a very mutated population. So there is no way that the vaccination industry is going to keep up with the ever-growing pathogenic population that keeps mutating known viruses. So you just you just can't even worry about it. Just drink the J juice, okay? When you get exposed to a pathogen your body doesn't recognize, relative to where you are in the J juice, you either have inflammation and deal with it, create antibodies and fix the mutation, or you won't even notice it. Like right now, my husband's home, he's sick, okay? He probably, you know, he's sick because his body came in contact with a pathogen it didn't recognize. Right now, he is creating antibodies, but also probably mutating the hell out of that virus. So who knows, whatever he passed on is going to then mutate the population. Somebody else is going to get that virus and it's going to mutate. And now we'll see probably a whole new type of virus next year. And who can we trace it back to? There's no way, because there's his pathogens and his biochemistry and then another person's biochemistry that's an inflammation, another person's biochemistry. You won't know who is the one that actually started, because it keeps getting passed from person to person to person, and then it mutates. So, you know, really, if you want to blame someone, blame the sick people, blame the mutated people who are mutating these pathogens to warrant the vaccines. Because yes, if you bring to the table so many mutations, so many weaknesses, then yes, a cold could potentially kill somebody. Okay, that's the whole point of the vaccines. I don't love it, believe me. This is very foreign to me to say that there's a reasoning behind the vaccines, but now that I'm well balanced and I understand, I get it. But here's a way for you guys to kind of see where you are. Go get a titer test to reflect current conditions today. It's not going to tell you what's going to happen 2 or 5 or 10 years from now if they decide to then force vaccinate you because of requirements. Okay, so right now you do a titer test, you're going to see exactly what is reflective of what it is that you've been exposed to. Now, you get a titer test in 2 to 5 years, it's going to change relative to what kind of strains that are out there that they want to see protection. Okay, so titer test today is not going to help you 5 or 10 years from now, because diseases mutate. But at least you have that recourse to know that if you've already been exposed to that pathogen, you don't have to get the vaccine. Okay, and that's what the titer tests are there. It's a reflection of where you are in the environment and what pathogens you've been exposed to. And also a barometer of what could potentially turn into something if you don't stay on the J juice. The titer test is going to tell you what it is that you're going to deal with in the future. Those are future triggers. Those titer tests, those antibodies are future triggers. If you don't do J juice or do strategic nutrition, that you see a reversal and everything to where you're not aging, okay, because that's how you know that you've actually reversed all your situations, that you're not aging at all. You are looking 25 to 30 or whatever it is, at the point of maturity forever, no matter what your conditions that you're in. If you're in a gas chamber, well, obviously not, you won't survive that. But right now you're not in a gas chamber. Yeah, you're 5G, yeah, there's chemtrails, but you take in strategic nutrition, you can actually dilute all the antibodies that your body is developing being in pathogenic environments. Okay, so the titer test is going to be your barometer. So if you don't do the J juice and you get a titer test, it's just rolling the dice to figure out what backdoor triggers are going to finally come to surface and then create some crazy disease, because then agglutination, flocculation, coagulation, coalesce, all of those antibodies and viruses and pathogens will coalesce. And then guess what? They could potentially turn into a new crazy disease that they're going to be like, oh my God, this is so new. Not really, because you look at somebody's blood, they're type A, B positive. It's a lot of antigen in their blood that's creating antibodies, that's creating backdoor triggers. Okay? So, cells respond to your internal environment as well as your external environment. And that's why they call these, these different interest groups terror cells. We have just as many terror type of people on American soil. They're not even out there, actually. We have a lot of people on American soil that are so racist, so discriminatory. They are the mutated people. They are the ones that are causing all of this craziness because they're aging mutations. We have an aging government. Putin's aging, Trump is aging. When you have aging politicians, and see, for you to even be president, I mean, I think Obama was the youngest president, but he aged extremely fast when he was in office. But it seems like for a person to be president, they have to go through all this experience. And with all this experience comes also age, because no one's reversing the aging process. So their ideas and their ways of doing stuff, even though we're trying to keep the rule of law type of thing, but it's also mutated. Some of the reactions, some of the way they say things that are being interpreted by a population is also mutated. It gets mutated, and so things get lost in translation. But yeah, I was watching last night the 90s, the CNN documentary of the 90s, and then they had the thing about all the terror stuff with the Columbine and the 9/11, and then the World Trade Center the first time, and then the Nigeria terror stuff, or it happened in Kenya, the embassy, and then I guess even the Timothy McVeigh, and that place, I think it was Oklahoma, that's right, and then the Waco. See, and what happened, now I'm looking at all of this history and I'm like, oh my God, the government was left with no other choice, because the Branch Davidian compound, they were creating automatic weapons. They're taking semi-automatic weapons and creating automatic weapons because they were fighting back to the ATF and all of them. So what could they do? They didn't want to have this mutated people turn into this large cell to then go and create anarchy. So when George Bush said the New World Order ruled by, was it ruled by the law and whatever the conduct? I got it. Let me read that. Hold on a second. Let's see, NWO George Bush. Remember, guys, I was a conspiracy theorist a long time ago. But now I kind of get it, okay? New World Order, hold on. New World Order and some about rule of law and conduct of nations. Law, conduct of nation. All right, I gotta get that quote. I should actually quote. I'm on Bing right now. I probably should just go to Google, but okay. Okay, where the rule of law governs the conduct of nations. Okay. So where the rule of law governs the conduct of nations. So now let's take this down to the cellular level. The rule of law that governs the conduct of nations. Well, nations are made up of people who are made up of cells. And if you are violating the laws, you're going to have death and chaos. That's not what they want. They don't want death and chaos, because you can't survive in death and chaos, people. So the rule of law is that you conduct yourself in a specific way to foster life, but we still can't legislate morals. So then the government has to come in and be that happy medium to figure out a way to meet everybody where they are and still keep relative peace and keep public health at a certain minimum. Okay? So you have the laws of your immune system, the laws of your body, the laws of your household, the laws of your community, the laws of your county, the laws of your state, your city, your continent, the universe. Well, then now it makes sense. You see, and I'm just like, oh my God, to my husband last night when I was watching this, I'm watching the CNN stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I am now back to where I was before, but now I have a better understanding of how this damn world works. And boy, was I freaking brainwashed for so many years, but I had to be as far as the conspiracy world. Because from the perspective of the law and the body and fostering life and why people die is because they're violating the laws of their body. Now I understand what our government is doing. They're dealing with some mutated people, and they're also mutated themselves, okay? I'm not saying that they are benevolent and they are the end all be all. Oh no. But they have the right idea. It's just that we're dealing with mutations. We're dealing with a government that has mutations as well as the people. And when you have a mutated president and you have mutated leaders out there, they're not exactly be making the best choices that are going to understand and elicit everybody's, listening, because they are only limited to what they know. And so where does Jilly Juice come into all of this craziness of different ideas? And then they think that Jilly Juice is killing, where it comes down to freaking science, guys. Forget all the stories. If you're going to have a story about something, make it a story of science around everything. Don't call it, I know Kevin calls hormones energy, but then here's the thing. There is context. Okay, so energy out there, like the elements, like the weather, which is like energy, they wouldn't call them hormones, but if you want to understand where I'm coming from, how everything is connected, that's how I kind of refer to the wind as a type of hormone. But really, it's a manifestation of elements that create a specific type of reaction. It's a chemical reaction. Wind is a chemical reaction. It's a gas reaction, chemical reaction to all the different things that are out there. Okay, but we have to understand the connections, and everything comes down to science, comes down to periodic tables, it comes down to chemistry, comes down to biochemistry. And then that's how that explains everything that you're doing, everything that you're experiencing. And then you can then start seeing why it is we have terror cells, why it is we have, how we can even hold our own countrymen accountable for their discrimination and imbalances. Like, I'm getting away from the patriots. I love my country, but when you take an extreme point of view like nationalism, which, okay, great, and you take an extreme point of view of being an anti-vaxxer, you take an extreme point of view of everything, then what you're doing is you're guiding thought processes to go to the complete other direction, or you are creating such an extreme, and then it's going to reflect, and then you're going to reinforce other extreme imbalanced people to then gather together to create more extreme. It's called groupthink. When you have so much groupthink, no one's thinking logically, they're just reacting from all the different hormones. Okay, so that's why people need to splinter off. That's why lactobacillus needs to go in there, like Jilly Juice, and dump Jilly Juice and all the people who are extremists, who are gathering in groups, being extreme, and dilute them so they don't become this cancer. So if you're an anti-vaxxer, you're almost like a cancer. If you are so extreme in one type of viewpoint, you're like a cancer, because what you're doing is you're taking an idea and making it so extreme to where it turns people into extremists. Instead of saying, hey, there is a reasoning behind this, and let's find a way to say, okay, well, we can't legislate morals, but let's take care of ourselves. then we're going to be immune to how it is the government tries to level the playing field to keep everybody on even playing field, even ground. Because believe me, if the government wants to kill you, you'd be dead. Okay? Anti-vaxxers. So you guys have an important responsibility to get your insides well balanced. So no matter how you get introduced to a pathogen, your body is not going to create agglutination and then potentially trigger a backdoor trigger in the future. Okay? This is why, so that's why, I guess in a lot of ways, why I like being by myself. I tried to fit in all the time when I was younger. There's no group that would have taken me because I couldn't get with. I mean, what did I try to be? A rocker, a rapper? What else? I mean, I was a little hair bear back then. I was a poser. I knew it. I don't care, but I was a poser. And then I did my own thing. There was never a group I felt like I could belong to. And I'm adopted too, okay? So I'm adopted into a family, yes, and I've adopted sisters. But I mean, and that was probably my best, my longest relationship is my mom, of course. She really took care of me and made sure that I was okay. And I was crazy anyways because I was mutated. So she did the best she could to deal with a mutated child from another country. And so, and then I did my own thing. Tried to assimilate to like college, and I did a little bit, got some knowledge, but nothing ever stuck. So I just left California because there's no way I can fit California. Then I come to Ohio, can't fit in Ohio really because I'm not like Ohioans out here. So it's like sometimes it's okay not to assimilate so much to where then you get lost in the rhetoric. You're not thinking for yourself. When you get lost in such amazing, like crazy ass group think, and you're not really just looking at it from a very different, I mean, it's easy to say from this point of view because I feel like I am very well balanced now. But a lot of you are still stuck in the group think, still stuck in wanting to band together and coalesce and agglutinate. And when you band together and you coalesce and you agglutinate, it mutates. The ideas mutate. Like playing telephone. When you have an anti-vaxxer that has good intentions because they're like, oh my God, this hurt this person. And they don't really say, well, it depends on what you bring to the table, because if you have a set of mutations, or let's say, a chemical, I don't know, like a shampoo, someone got an allergic reaction from a shampoo, they're going to read the ingredients like, oh my God, this is all poison. And they put out there on Facebook or wherever, oh my God, this product is poisonous. This has all these chemicals. Look what it did to me. Well, hey, you had the mutations. You're the one that had the mutations. They did the testing. The general population can do that shampoo. You just happen to can't. You're allergic because you have mutations. But they already did their testing in biotech to know that they can actually disseminate this for the general pop. Okay, so when I take my shampoo, I'm not worried about the chemicals because guess what? I have an immune system and I take chili juice and it's not going to affect me. But no, when you get a bunch of people that gather together, anti-vaxxers, pro-organic, anti-GMO, like hating all the chemicals and everything, guess what? The message gets mutated. It gets lost in the group think. Because now you're not thinking individually, you're thinking on this different level that doesn't elicit and foster real logic. It's all emotion. And so, yeah, you're going to have a mutated message from a group of people. And that's what the anti-vaxxers and the pro-vaxxers are putting out there. A mutated message. Instead of coming from a point of education, you are now eliciting a message that's so mutated that doesn't even now have any kind of logic to it anymore. And now it turned into, well, all vaccines and all products that have this thing is all poison to every single body. It becomes painting a broad stroke because the message has been mutated by mutated people. Because now you need jelly juice and the lactobacillus to then disperse the antibodies. Okay, that's how I can take jelly juice and the analogies out there and really paint a picture of all of these different interest groups. So yeah, you have these cells that are out there, terrorist cells. They need jelly juice and dump jelly juice on them to disperse them so they can stop creating this mutated message. Do you realize that those terror cells out there are no different than the anti-vaxxers, are no different than the pro-vaxxers that are so like militant, no different than any extremist group out there? Y'all are no different. you realize you are actually creating the same message. It's all about groupthink and emotions. No, nobody's thinking individually by themselves how this really is impacting themselves and what they can do individually. Oh no, they're painting a broad stroke. And that's what racism and that's what discrimination is, and that's where all the isms come from, is when people are group thinking and the message gets mutated. And I'm going to say mutated because it really hits home. So I spend a lot of time by myself thinking. And then when I put stuff out there on Facebook, it's because it's different. It's a thought process that maybe it might reach some of you who are still stuck in the group think, still stuck in the mutated messages that you're putting out there because you're part of those anti-vax, pro-vax, anti-government, conspiracy, chemtrail, whatever. And so that's why I have been shedding a lot of different people off my Facebook, because they're still part of the mutated group think. They can't individually think by themselves. So what does a mutated person do? They go join groups. Mutated people join groups because strength in numbers, because they can't stand alone on their own to think for themselves. End of story. So do you fit that? Do you fit that type of characteristic, or do you see a possibility that maybe you can splinter off and develop your own thought process that's aligned with life? That's what I had to come to terms with. So I get off the bandwagon, get off the activism, get off the group thing, get off of all that bullshit and start thinking for myself, and then spend time by myself. Okay? But, I am married, so I am married to somebody who doesn't exactly think the same way I do, and that's okay. We have enough in common to keep things going, but yes, sometimes we do clash because we have different ideas, but we tolerate the differences and we embrace and celebrate the similarities. That's exactly what we got to do as far as our society, if you are still viable and you're still relatively healthy. How do you foster tolerance, and how do you foster embracing the similarities? And when you are saying, well, I don't believe in this, when you're looking for differences in people and you're not looking for similarities, you're still fostering division. And this is why we have issues. This is why we have mutations, because you're fostering division. We really need to foster the similarities and embrace them and foster life and foster love, but not too much. Foster tolerance, because not everyone's going to think the same way you do, but where's the similarities that you can find and work from? You pro-vaxxers and anti-vaxxers, you guys want to live. Well, hey, Jilly Juice is the common ground y'all should come from. Because if you're not doing Jilly Juice, then it doesn't matter what the hell. Because they're going to be exposed to mutated pathogens, because we have people who don't take care of themselves. We have babies that are being born compounding their mutations, and we have elderly people who are mutating their diseases, infecting their loved ones. Okay, so you might as well just foster love and tolerance, not division. Find the similarities, not the differences. And I even people that are in my corner, they're still wanting to foster the differences, want to look for the differences. If you can't see that there's a similarity between you and whatever it is that you believe in, then why are you looking for the differences? You're still stuck in wanting to splinter off into your own mutated group. It's when you see the similarity in everybody is when you start unifying and then getting everybody on a common purpose of life. That's what the body is trying to do. It's trying to find the similarities and then disassemble the mutated cells. That's what autophagy is somebody trying to find the similarities. Okay, so they purge out what doesn't belong, the people that are being divisive, and then they go and regenerate and foster the people that do find the similarities, and they foster life and tolerance and acceptance. Okay, so there's that. All right, love you guys. Thank you so much for being my sounding board, because I couldn't have done this without you. Okay, love y'all. Bye. Hi, Heini.